Hi, my name's Cameron and I'm from WASSP Multibeam. Today I'm going to take you through the WASSP Multibeam CDX visualization user interface software. WASSP Multibeam is a world-leading marine acoustic manufacturer. We utilize multi-beam sonar technology to map the seafloor, navigate and locate objects in the water column, which can be seen in real time in both 2D and 3D. The WASSP system includes a multi-beam transducer, which will send high-powered signals into the water, which then bounce back and are then received again by the transducer and sent to our DRX processing unit. This is then combined with data from other sensors, such as a satellite compass to give us GPS position and heading, and a motion sensor to give motion data, which includes pitch, roll, and heave to be able to compensate the movement of the boat and accurately know its position. With the WASSP Multibeam, we can view and analyze data such as three-dimensional seafloor topography, often called bathymetry, hardness of the seafloor substrate, targets in the water column, navigational positioning information, as well as traditional sounder readings for different sections of the sonar beams. To do this, we utilize a range of third-party software, or we can use WASP's very own user interface program called CDX. So let's have a look at the CDX software to get familiar with what it can do and how to use it. To start up, we want to click on our CDX icon. Once we have opened our CDX software, we will get a warning screen. And if we click OK, we will go directly through to our main navigation panel. How this looks will be determined by what model of WASP you have and if you have used the software already, as it will remember the last settings used. The navigation screen can be hidden in the settings, so you may not see it if it is toggled off. From this main screen of the CDX software, we have our home button in the top left of the screen, which will open up your main menu. Below this, at the top of the screen, we have three buttons. On the right, at the top, we have one of our most important buttons, which is the transmit button, which you can toggle to start transmitting or put the unit into standby. Next to that, we have a screen selection button, which will take you to another menu to allow you to select what actual display panel is shown on your screen. And on the far left, we have a night mode button, which will dim the screen to allow for night viewing. Let's have a look at the screen selection in more depth. The second button along this top row is our screen selection button in our CDX UI software. And you'll see the icon that looks like two squares. If we click on this screen selection button, we will be taken to a menu that has a number of options that allows us to select what screen panels we wish to have showing. The first option in our screen selection is the configuration of our screens. If you have two screens available, you can select what panels show on which screens. Next to this, you have a presets option where we have some common screen setups created that you can quickly select. If we want to select the screens ourselves, we will have a range of options based on the licenses and the type of WASP unit that you have. In any screen configuration, as you are moving your cursor around the screen, you will also see a cursor box, which gives contextual information based on where your cursor point is located. I can also right-click in my panel to give me a contextual menu, which will give me more control on that particular panel. And we will explain how these work when we dive into each function of the WASP. Let's now look at the different visualization panel options that we can choose. The sonar view shows a real-time 120-degree view down the center, port and starboard of the vessel. Now in this panel, if we right click, we will get our sonar view contextual menu, which will give us the options to turn on and turn off the seafloor line, show or hide our cursor info, show the beams which we can configure in the main menu, and finally a settings button, which will jump the left-hand menu to the settings section for this particular panel's function. Now we will see the settings button at the bottom of all the contextual menus when right clicking on a screen panel. And it's a quick way to jump to more detailed settings. Another nice function is that once you have a particular setting menu open on that left-hand side, you can click on a screen panel and it will automatically jump that side menu to the settings for that panel. The 2D mapping view gives us a shaded relief of the seafloor from a bird's eye perspective. When we right-click in this panel, we are going to get a range of options. First up, we have the option to disable the mapping. Below this, we can change the view orientation between north up or heads up. Below this is a color tool, which if we turn on, will cause a color tool box to open up. We'll look into this in more detail later, but it's a very useful tool. Under this, we have two options to add more details to our mapping. The first one is depth contours, which will add contour lines to our mapping. And the drop down will allow us to determine the depth difference between the contour lines, which will usually change how close or spaced apart the lines are going to look on your screen. The depth soundings will show the depth reading on the mapping. And again, we have a drop down menu with low, medium and high options, which, just like the contour lines, will affect how many or how close they display on the screen. Next up, we have our option to turn our cursor menu, which shows the contextual data on or off. Below this is a depth option. If this is turned on, our cursor will display a depth at whatever point on the mapping that cursor is located. The next two options will be determined by what licenses you have available. If you have a water column targets license, you can turn this on or off. And the next option below this is backscatter. So if you also have a backscatter license, you can also turn this on and off. And we're going to look into this in more detail later. The following two options relate to our charting, with our drop mark option, which will drop a mark where your cursor is, and below this is the mark vessel option, which will mark where the vessel is located. Once these marks are dropped, we can then right-click on them to edit or to get more info. Next up is our measure tool. Now this allows us to select 2 points on our mapping, which will then create a sliced view of the seafloor so we can see the shape of the seafloor. Under this is our removal tool, and this is going to allow us to remove any areas of mapping that we're not happy with. Now, once areas are removed, we can always bring them back, so don't worry if you remove an area and you're worried that it's gone forever. Near the bottom is our smoothing tool, which allows us to change the amount of smoothing in the mapping that we see. And finally, at the bottom, we have our settings button. So just like in all the other panels, this will make our left-hand menu jump to the specific settings for that panel's functions. The 3D mapping view takes our 2D information along with other information and presents it in 3D. In this view, we can rotate and move around to view any structure or object better. We also have a contextual menu within this panel, but what we will find is that a lot of the functions that can be adjusted in the 2D mapping will also apply to the 3D mapping. In our contextual menu, first up we have our view orientation, and we can choose north up, heads up or 3D view. Below this is our scale option, which changes the view ratio and zooms in and out so we can see the mapping better. Below this is our color tool, and just like in the 2D contextual menu, if we click on this, our color toolbox will pop up. We can also turn our cursor info box on and off with the cursor info box option. Now below this is our depth option, and similar to the 2D view, if we turn this on, wherever our cursor is located on the mapping, it's going to display a depth. The next two options, which again, just like in our 2D contextual menu, will be dependent on if you have these licenses available. Now you can turn these on and off, and these are the water column targets, which will show objects in the water column between the transducer and the seafloor, and the backscatter, which will show the hardness or softness of the seafloor. Now under this, the next button is our Reset View button, and this will just reset all the settings for this view back to the default. Finally, at the bottom, again we have our Settings button, which is going to cause the main menu to jump to those particular settings for more detailed adjustment. Now in our Home menu, under the Configuration section is our UI Preferences. And starting from the top, I can select my language. Under this is the setting for depth display, and from the drop-down menu we can choose if it is measured as depth below transducer, surface or keel, which will change based on the offset for your keel and where the transducer is located. The next option below this is our Global Gain mode, and this allows us to adjust the gain globally, which combines our sonar and soundar view. Or if I select active display, I can independently adjust the gain on either of those screen panels separately. Under our gain option is our range mode option. This will affect how you display the information from the multibeam signal. Because we are sending our signal out in a fan-like shape, the outer beams will travel a greater distance than the ones directly below the boat. So we can select to display the range either by acquisition, which would mean our soundings show up unevenly, or by depth, which would be evenly. The Units option allows us to set up our units. Depending on which type you prefer to use, you have the options to select the units used for your depth, speed, position, temperature, and both long and short distances, with all the major units of measurement available. Under this, we have our night mode adjustments option. You will remember we have a night mode on and off button on our main screen. And this allows us to also turn it on and off, but we can also adjust and change the dimming or brightness level for our night mode. The Show Taskbar option is for Windows-based PCs, and this allows us to hide or display the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. Under this is our Zoom Control button, and this will hide or display a zoom control on our screen panels. This allows us to adjust the zoom within a panel by clicking the plus or minus icons. Even if you have hidden your zoom control, you can still adjust the zoom on any active screen by using the rollerball on your mouse to zoom in and out. The next option is our Nav Bar option, and this will hide or display the navigation bar on the left-hand side of your screen, which shows all your key real-time navigation data with position, speed over ground (SOG), course over ground (COG), heading, pitch, roll and heave, MTW, which is mean temperature of water, and depth. And this is also a great way to see if we are missing any information from sensors or other components. Our Keep Data Manager Alive option is a way of making sure our Data Manager software is not accidentally closed. Now, Data Manager is our small piece of software that allows for replaying your data files and is particularly useful for our wireless products. If I turn this option on and close down my Data Manager, first I will get a warning, and then it will automatically restart the Data Manager program. Finally, we have our Settings Preset option. Now, this is a new feature in our Bluebeam release, and this will allow us to create or upload user presets. Next up in our home menu under the Configuration section, after doing our UI preferences, is our DRX Processing. And this interrogates our DRX processor, which is our hardware system, and shows us the connection to it and what it is doing. First up, we can see our operating frequency. Here it is 160 kilohertz. Under this, our chirp operating bandwidth, which here is set to 20 kilohertz, and then our ping rate, which will change as the depth changes. Our hardware system temperature, and below this, our sound velocity, which can be estimated or we can measure depending on if you have some sort of sound velocity sensor or not. And below this is our input voltage. Now this we recommend should have at least 13 volts. So these can be used for troubleshooting and to check if your hardware is operating as it should. Under this we have a drop-down selection where you can select the water salinity and temperature. As this changes, it will affect the sound velocity or speed of sound through the water. Because we are using multi-beam technology, the beams out to the sides of the boat travel much further than the ones straight down below. So it is important to make sure we have accurate readings for whatever that sound speed is. Now, if we don't have sensors to measure this, we can manually input this information by either putting in the salinity and temperature of the water or the sound velocity itself. Now, if we do have sensors, we can also select the external temperature sensor or select an external sound speed sensor if you have one. In our new Bluebeam software, we also have an Estimate button which allows you to calculate the sound velocity. And this will work if you are traveling over flat seafloor to give you an estimated value for the sound velocity. Moving down, we have the option to manually set our operating frequency. And you can adjust this to a manual value or leave it off to work at its default. There is also an auto option which is normally used when you have an IMS, which is an Interference Management System license, which will automatically adjust the frequency to avoid any other noise or interference that may affect the system, and it will find a clean frequency to use. Now, this could be due to such things as other sounders on board or electrical noise. Now, in our home menu, still under the configuration section, is our system health. The system health settings will show all the alerts that are active in your system. And you will also see an alert notification at the top of your main screen if you have any alerts. In this menu, you can choose to hide the notifications so you no longer see them in your main display by clicking on the bell icon. Now you will see a line go through it when the notification is turned off. And you can also choose to accept an alert if it has already gone away, and this will make it disappear. If you need any more information on WASSP Multibeam, be sure to get in touch with your local WASSP specialist, or alternatively, check out the website.